Hi, how the heck are you? Have you ever loved a TV show so much that you wish that they would produce more than one season every 1 to sometimes even 2 years? If so, you might love the idea of your favorite show getting a spin-off. So many great TV shows have spawned spin-offs that were either as good as the main show or even better. Frasier, Angel, Better Call Saul, come on. However, there's one spin-off that the general public doesn't seem to know about, and given its Wii U or Xbox Series X level stupid-ass name, people wouldn't even know that you're talking about a different show most of the time. I'm of course referring to American Horror Stories. You heard me correctly, the spin-off of American Horror Story is inexplicably titled American Horror Stories, and it takes the anthology format of the main show and condenses it Twilight Zone style into self-contained, single-episode-long narratives that differ from episode to episode. And you might say to me, but Clay, I love American Horror Story, and I love everything it does. Why wouldn't I love more of the same thing from this show? And I would say back to you, you're a stupid person with bad opinions, and I don't trust you on anything from here on out. And that might seem harsh, but it's actually an entirely appropriate way to respond to that statement. This isn't the Emmy-winning machine the main series started as, and it's not even a pale facsimile of what the main series has become today.
Do you want an Oscar? Do you want it as much as a baby? Yes.
Now, the reason I decided to make this video is I was sitting on my couch waiting for my ally to download Metaphor from the Steam store, and I was scrolling Hulu on my phone and saw that they released another half season for Huluween. I love Halloween, so I decided to settle in and watch some hot garbage to get in the mood, and what I was subjected to was, in my opinion, one of the worst episodes of horror TV maybe ever to have been authored and put to video. We're going to talk about that one last, but let me start by telling you about what this show is and how it does what it does so badly and so consistently. The literal first thing this show did when it was released in 2021 was to go fully against the structure of having single episode narratives with an inexplicable 2-part premiere of episodes. Not only was there a problem with the structural elements, but there was a massive problem with the idea behind the episodes as well. This 2-part premiere focused on really cashing in on the goodwill of the main show's fan base by acting as a direct continuation of the widely beloved original season of the show, Murder House. I would personally contest that these 2 episodes are probably 2 of the better ones of the whole show, as the nostalgia of seeing some of the original actors appearing in the house is a powerful draw. However, the quality of writing is very immediately apparent, and it is way worse than the writing in the main series. The episodes are essentially about a girl and her 2 dads moving into the murder house to refurbish the building and flip it for a profit. The girl, Scarlett, has a crush on Maya, and Maya and her nasty friends prank Scarlett by recording her in an intimate moment. Scarlett expresses some violent sexual fantasies and is tricked into being live streamed while she divulges this information to Maya. Scarlett lures the trickster bullies into the house and dons the rubber man suit, kills them, and eventually meets the rubber man himself. This is the entire first episode of this premiere, and even in this brief moment of narrative observation, the characters are all written as weird, big swings at teenage archetypes, and the main character turns to murder from her relatively normal lifestyle on such a dime that it's enough to make the viewer's head spin. This will be the template by which the entire show is written from here on out. The second half of the premiere essentially finds Scarlett falling in love with a teenage girl who died in the house bathtub of her own accord, and this ghostly girl murders Scarlett's fathers to try and get her to stay in the house with her forever.
Honey, we need to talk.
We get a big happy ending where Scarlett travels the world all year long and returns on Halloween when the ghosts can walk free of the house to visit everyone. The first impression this leaves is so undeniably negative that it's like going to the sequel of a movie that you loved, but the sequel ends up just being the director referencing things you liked about the first movie for an hour and a half while he also points and laughs at you. It tarnishes the spirit of the original season by offering a subpar continuation, and even has the gall to present the end of the premiere as a mirror to the end of the original season, which even further contrasts the wild variance in quality between the 2 shows, and is wholly unearned. The second story of this season is about a cursed film called Rabbit Rabbit, resurfacing after many years of being lost, and it follows 2 horny teens to the drive-in where they're going to see a screening of the film.
Girl, it's just another orifice. If you can't handle a finger in your ear, how are you gonna handle a dick in your...
The pacing issues of this show are made the most apparent in this episode, as from start to finish, it runs a whopping 40 minutes, and in the span of those 40 minutes, these characters and the world presented in this episode experience such dramatic change that it would probably feel too extreme if the episode was actually a full miniseries.
Story of my life.
The important thing to note about this atrocious episode of television is that its existence as a spin-off of the main series is a large part of why the writing is so erratic. American Horror Story is already known as a show that amplifies every character and narrative beat to 11. It's very edgy and it's very over the top. It's part of the reason some people love the show so much, and it's absolutely a reason that many people don't love the show at all. So to spin the show off and essentially boil an idea down to a single episode rather than a whole season is a difficult prospect. This difficulty manifests so clearly episode to episode, but Drive-In is such a great example of the issue because by the end of this 40 minutes, the consequence of this movie being presented at the Drive-In is pushed so far in this single episode that somehow by the end we see the trailer for it airing on Netflix after the main characters have killed the director and burned the original copy that was played at the Drive-In. The episode literally ends with the city of Los Angeles burning in the distance. This is one of the most absurd escalations I have ever witnessed on film, and the fact that the writers were obviously given permission to go as wild as they wanted hurts the narrative so badly. This distillation of the AHS format into a single shot of shitty horror Everclear that each episode asks you to choke down with a smile is insulting to the viewer, and that's part of the reason I'm so dumbfounded every time they announce more episodes. This show has been like this since episodes 1, 2, and 3, and it only seems further emboldened to write these poor actors into even more insane scenarios with every new batch of episodes. Also, the gross, sexually aggressive boy and his girlfriend lose their virginity to one another at the end of the episode, so if anyone out there is keeping score, let's knock a few points off for that as well, please. Some dumbass Logan Paul stand-in influencer characters are killed in their mansion by an evil pagan Santa Claus. The Ian McShane evil Santa did it way better. I don't even really need to talk about this one because it's exactly how it sounds. It's written badly, the characters are all obnoxious because they need to be amped up to 1,000 for the awful tone of the show, and the idea is just something that's already been done by the main show with a paper-thin veiled criticism of influencer culture. It just takes something people don't like in real life and kills it in a gruesome way on camera to try and appeal to our societal sense of schadenfreude. It's an especially weak episode in a show comprised exclusively of weak episodes, and it's wholly unremarkable. This episode is about a woman failing to get pregnant and resorting to demonic magic to give birth to the son she's always dreamt of. This is another episode that shows off a quality of this show's writing that I absolutely hate. It does this thing where at the beginning, you're given limited information about the characters and their situations, and then part of the way through, there's a wild, unearned twist that I think is supposed to excite the viewer. Then, once you start to realize how stupid the writing in the show is post-twist, it does another twist on top of the first one, which I guess the audience is supposed to perceive as a stroke of cinematic genius, but in reality, this method of presenting cheap thrills to try and keep the audience engaged just further distances the viewer from any sort of investment in the characters, because every 10 minutes, we're told not to believe what we're seeing, and thus stop caring about the information being presented because the show has become an unreliable narrator. The wife uses demon magic, but it turns out it's fake magic, and the husband and his shitty friends just want to trick her into believing there was a demon coming for her child to get her institutionalized so they can have all of her money. A perfect plan. But then, whoa boy, holy cow, is there a twist on top of that twist? The demon magic was real, and the demon comes and murders the husband's mistress and his friends. The husband is thrown in prison, and the demon promises the wife another baby if she lets him go. I'm really condensing these episodes into their core plot points for those of you watching at home as a time saver, but I promise you these ideas don't get less stupid or bad when they're presented over 40 minutes. They just waste a lot more of your time. This one is about feral cannibals in a national park. A boy disappears as a child camping in a park, and when his parents return to try and find him, he's the king of the cannibal people, and he orders his tribe to eat his parents, and they do. I'm not even going to talk about this one. If you want to know why the idea is stupid and bad, just go back 10 seconds to when I said the plot again. This is the worst episode of the first season by a mile, and it has the least interesting premise of any of them. Here we are at the finale of what has been a truly incredible first season of this show. And 7 episodes in, I guess the writers just completely ran out of ideas, so we'll just do another one in Murder House. I hope no one still liked that season because this is going to continue to tarnish it.
Are you sure you two want to go in there? That place was built above the devil's asshole.
That is why we are going in. We are like huge American Horror Story fans.
But don't say I didn't warn you.
This is one of those classic television portrayals of someone who makes video games. A nerdy artist needs to immerse themselves in some sort of real-world experience to find the right inspiration to create the perfect piece of work. And they seemingly act as the writer, developer, game designer, and sort of jack-of-all-trades creator of games that we would maybe culturally perceive during the 1970s or 80s before games were made by hundreds of overworked, underpaid developers and artists in sweatshop conditions. So this girl, Michelle, decides to go to Murder House on Halloween to research her newest game, which is for some reason about this real house in the universe in which she lives where families go insane and kill each other. In a shocking twist, she's killed almost immediately. Characters from the first 2 episodes of the season stab her to death, and a year later on Halloween, her son meets her in the house and she tells him she can't escape. He tries to burn the house down for some reason, thinking that this will free his mother's spirit. The characters from the premiere try to stop him, but the other ghosts in the house want to be dead for real and have their spirits freed, so they stop the girls, and the son burns the house down. 3 years later, there are condos where the house used to be, and the girls from the premiere are able to reunite in those condos. The rest of the ghosts moved on when the house burned down.
True love never dies.
Oh, and yet again, dear viewer, this show is here to stomp all over the first season of the main show and the premiere episodes of this very show. We learn that the big twist of this episode is that this has actually all taken place in the video game the main character created, and the son finishes playing it and tells his still living mother that she did a good job, questioning if the spirits in the house could have escaped for real. They leave the house to get lunch together, and a ball rolls into frame, implying that the ghosts did escape and are present in their home. This is such a mind-blowingly awful way to end this season of television, and it does tell you exactly what this show is and what it will continue to be. Now, for the main event, with the combined power of all the knowledge we've accumulated about the things this show does so badly, I'm here to present to you This episode relies on exploiting mythos that were created by sort of a loose collective of people on the internet in the way that Slender Man or things of that kind were. The Backrooms are a fictional liminal space that exists outside of our normal perception in the world around us. In the fiction of the Backrooms, they are accessed by no clipping through reality, and they are an unending, inescapable series of yellow fluorescently lit hallways and rooms resembling an office building. The core conceit of this mythological place is that the fear perceived by viewers of images or video of the Backrooms comes from the unsettling familiarity of the images. Users all over the internet have added additional context and new ideas to the concept of the Backrooms, but they have a pretty universal baseline in the way they're portrayed. This episode of this awful show, so boldly titled Backrooms, relies on the established cultural idea of what the Backrooms are. However, in the 40-minute runtime, I would contest that there's less than 1 minute of a successful, faithful vision of the Backrooms. The rest of the episode is just the cheap, sloppy writing we've come to expect from this show, with some extra bullshit twists layered on top in its usual style. The main character of this episode is a grieving father / Oscar-winning writer, for some reason, whose son has disappeared. We're introduced to this plot point when his friend shows up at his house at the beginning of the episode and chastises him for not coming out of his house or being more communicative. He responds with very over-the-top anger and delivers some very clumsy exposition explaining how difficult it is for him to have lost his son unexpectedly. In a classic moment of AHS writing, he claims he's worried his son has been sex trafficked, because we need to include a frightening sexual element to every tortured character that exists within this universe. He yells at his friend and tells him to leave, and as he walks through a door to another room, he finds himself in a very bad adaptation of the Backrooms. In this endless series of grocery store aisles, we see the promise of a liminal space that actually unsettles and off-puts the viewer. And after just a single moment of something interesting happening, the lights begin to flicker, and the character yells fuck over and over again, smashing a help button while voiceover plays over the speakers of the grocery store, saying someone is on the way over and over again. This is such a desperately wrong portrayal of liminal space, and especially a bad and wrong portrayal of the Backrooms. The father character then sees two figures run by out of the corner of his eye and then comes upon a bleeding door for some reason, and a masked version of his missing son appears with a robed and masked adult figure to taunt him. This is not the Backrooms. This is a college film student's first draft of their horror short. Afterwards, he appears back at home, and his ex-wife tells him that he's been gone for 3 weeks, and their son was found dead and buried in the woods by a playground. He immediately starts asking if the police have found any evidence, and then monologues about how mankind created hell. He says it's real. We created it. The performance is actually pretty good, considering the script comes across as having been written by a single 19-year-old with access to ChatGPT, but even this performance can't salvage the abysmal interpretation of a beloved internet liminal space. Then, he walks through a door into a room that does at least look like the traditional Backrooms. This is the only moment in this episode where the interpretation is faithful, and this still lasts for such a brief time that anyone unfamiliar with the idea of the Backrooms wouldn't know that this is the only part of the show that actually does them justice. Then he immediately starts yelling again, breaking the unsettling atmosphere, and he finds a hole in a wall and is then in a new location that looks nothing like the Backrooms.
No.
Did you enjoy that? Hey, do you think that was fun how we talked about that thing that you like so much? Every other thing portrayed while he's in the Backrooms adheres to the same standards set by the rest of the episode thus far. They take something sort of unsettling, like an old television set with static on it, and the moment the show actually starts to capture any real interesting moment of that liminal space feeling, a clumsy metaphor is introduced. He pulls an Oscar statuette out of a fucking pig on a dinner table as an organ plays at such a high volume that the viewer can hardly think, and then a loud voiceover comes on announcing his Oscar win.
Goes to Daniel Hausman Berger, the chorus.
Every single solitary moment of wait in this episode is recklessly and clumsily tripped over by some new stupid idea. So the son takes his mask off and his eyes are bleeding, and then the dad is tackled by several robed figures and ends up back at home. This episode is so afraid to let a moment sit with the viewer that it acts like someone flipping through their TikTok feed and just completely changes up the environment and the situation and the threat at every single turn. Don't you dare get interested in a single thing going on, because the only through line is the fact that this guy so glaringly and obviously killed his own son. Don't search for any subtext in this show, because all of the show is written in 48-point bold font. So this guy needs to know what's going on. So he does what anyone in that situation would do and goes to searchforthings.com in his web browser and types in "place outside of reality hallucination" with punctuation. So this dude legitimately finds a resource and video of someone having experienced what he has, and this is his reaction. This show tries so hard to emulate the escalation of the main series, and it never works. It's just clumsy and comes off as stupid, and I feel so bad for some very talented actors being seemingly tricked into performing on this program. So he emails the guy that posted the video of the Backrooms, and he meets him in prison, where the guy explains liminal spaces through the lens of him being a video game developer. Oh my god, we're doing video games again? Then, through him, the episode makes up a bullshit rule about how if you kill someone, and I guess deny it, you end up in the Backrooms. The show then trips all over itself to try and do a single interesting thing and explains how the guy killed a woman while driving and using his phone. Demonstrating a level of film writing skill I can only describe as I have paged through a single book on writing for film, we are presented with the exact parallel from this imprisoned man denying having killed that woman to the main character obviously having killed his son. This is also confusing because the show is giving us this information in an extremely overdramatic fashion, and the fact that he killed the son has already been made so obvious that there's just nothing more to investigate here. It just feeds us slop on a platter and expects us to enjoy it, which honestly is kind of how I would sum up this entire show in a nutshell. Prison guy tells him to fix it so he can escape the Backrooms, and he instead is presented with evidence that proves he committed the murder and burial as police surround his house. He pulls a gun on the police and is shot several times in return. We get a big old cliche sequence of the dad ignoring his family and being yelled at for not caring about them enough as he leaves to do Hollywood writer things, and we see him strangle his son to death next to a playground. This is another thing that this show does, and it comes from the main series, but doing it in these 40-minute episodes is very off-putting. In the context of these 40-minute narratives, just outright showing every single violent act is overwhelming, and there's just not enough context to merit so much of the violence being overt. So the dad rides the escalator from us and finds a demon cradling his dead son on a swing set. The demon has his son's voice, because I guess that could be scary, right? If we did that. And then the robed figures show up and faces of the other characters show up to Scrooge him into telling the truth about killing his son. Then this happens. So then I guess he leaves, and the big scary ending is that he has to wait a long time in purgatory. This show is truly and sincerely some of the absolute worst writing I've ever spent this much time consuming, because every time they release more episodes, I hope beyond hope that even one will tickle my fancy the way the main series did when it first started. And at this point, I'm starting to think that that is just a completely unrealistic hope of mine. Though I do get a lot of enjoyment out of feeling the deep anger well up inside me every time I watch this show, so hopefully I'll get a little bit of catharsis from having put some of these thoughts out into the world via this video. Now, I'm gonna go make a glass of sleepy time tea and eat a weed gummy and a magnesium gummy and a melatonin gummy and try and calm down. See you guys next time.